Rinpoche, thank you for giving us this second interview. We have some follow-up questions based on some of your replies. Specifically, in this documentary, The Law of Silence, it was actually quite shocking to see many photos of very respected lamas like Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and Dudjom Rinpoche with Robert Spatz. Hearing that they visited his centers, gave teachings there, and by doing so, basically, they legitimized him and made it able to continue. And so from a practitioner's perspective, it seems like either these great lamas, either they didn't know, or they did know and they ignored it. And both are actually really disturbing when you want to think that these people are wiser than you, and that's why you're following them. So I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah. It's always so difficult to sort of recount things, and because also I don't know how the people will hear it. People might hear it as, I'm trying to be, I don't know, defensive, bringing excuse. But, as I said in the earlier interview, it's really difficult. Like, let's begin with the more, what do you call it? We Buddhists have this, the Lamas are omniscient. They should know, right? So why didn't they know this? That's one argument. That to me is kind of easy to answer. Because, this is all hypothetical. What do you call it? Hypothesis?
Hypothetical?
Yeah.
Hypothesis.
Hypothesis. Yeah. Hypothesis. Right? Story.
It could be.
It could be. Right? So what I'm saying is, because of their omniscience, one could always say that it became only this much. It could get worse. You understand? It could get really worse. There's so many different ways to answer these things. Also, yes, I buy it that maybe they didn't know. That maybe is easiest, one of the easiest. But also, I'm, ready to accept that they know. But I don't know whether ignore is the right word. But, you have to, life is like this. You have to really look at all situations, right? It's like there's a saying in Tibet. There's actually an example. I don't know, but I've said this in the earlier interview. There was a father sleeping, resting peacefully, and then there's a son nearby. And then the son saw a fly hovering around the father's face. And then son thought, oh, no, that's, really disturbing my father's, rest. He had an axe. So he aimed at the, a fly. Of course, it ended up killing the father. So there's a lot of these kind of things. But, okay, let me tell you about a personal thing. It's really complicated. Because we could also say about you guys, about a lot of the people whom we these days so-called trust, they look harmless. They don't seem to be doing anything fishy, But who knows what they will do? I will tell you about this what Robert Batts. Right? I have met him. Now, at the sound of being so smart, I have personally never really, I've always thought this guy is a bit strange. But all these, what do you call it? Sexual abuse, all of this, I don't know whether this is true with you guys, with the rest of the world, but it is sort of new phenomena, isn't it? It wasn't, it did such kind, of course, the sexual abuse exists from the time immemorial. But what I'm saying is hyping it up and talking about it is kind of new thing, right? Isn't it? Even in the West?
Well, as far as understanding it as harmful and talking about it and trying to stop it.
I'm not saying it's not right. I think it's good. People should talk about it. And I'm sure there are a lot of things to talk about, But what I'm saying is, as far as I remember, we have never really heard about him and the sexual, related, especially with the kids at that time. The only image we got, and especially people a little skeptical like myself, here's this man who really helped the Tibetan cause. Let's say Tibetan cause, Dharma sponsors, Medicare, all of that. So we know that. But then there's also this, he appears to be sort of really interested in appearing himself as a spiritual leader. This is always taken, even today, maybe more so now than before, because of what has been happening. It has always been a little bit okay. So what is happening here? Something is not right. There's that kind of conversation. You have to also look at the situation we are talking about, like 60 years ago, 50 years ago. Dire situation. So here is a bunch of Tibetans who really think that their dharma, their culture is about to extinct, right? About to diminish, about to disappear. So any kind of help, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Yeah, we human beings tend to. And we have a lot of examples like that, not only on the spiritual world. We have a lot of, example like this in the political world where you help so and so freedom fighter, then they end up becoming terrorists. This is what human beings do. This is sort of, I think, I'm just okay. I'm sure people will hear I'm telling all these convoluted stories, but yes, it is a convoluted story because it's kind of convoluted situation. I mean, you can argue with me. It's very difficult. If there was this kind of conversation, like he was sexually abusing kids, and if that is as a bigger matter as today, I'm sure the Tibetan lamas would be much more cleverer to, to sort of at least stay further. I'm sure. I don't know whether I'm answering your questions, but tell me.
I mean, I think it's still, the issue is I could accept that, okay, this is the human mistake, but also in Tibetan Buddhism, we're being asked to see these gurus as something not just human as part of our practice, especially if you're a Vajrayana practitioner.
Sure.
And then the fact of it is that them being there and giving teachings and giving empowerment and basically being at the center.
Who are we talking about? Who's they? You mean Robert Batts?
Yeah, Robert Spatz, and then seeing like Dilgo Khyentse visit there.
I actually don't know whether he was doing that when these guys are alive. I have a little bit, one could actually analyze it. I don't know. There's a saying in Tibetan, when the cat's gone, the rats, the mouses, they dance. It's a bit about that. I don't actually remember them doing all this level. But I have to say, he was sort of wearing a little bit of different color. He had all this follower coming in. There were a lot of people who talked positive about him, but that could be anything, right? That could be because of his financial support. That could be also, people also like people. It doesn't have to be always financial. He could be very creative. He could be actually, for a particular person, he could appear and maybe even win.
So how, like, if you have devotion to someone like Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and Dudjom Rinpoche, but then really it just looks like they made like a big mistake.
Him?
No, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and Dudjom Rinpoche. That they made a big mistake by basically
empowering him.
Okay. Then how can a student continue?
I understand.
Yeah, like a dire mistake, like a mistake that down the line it really like led to, it sounds like, a lot of harm.
As I said earlier, I don't know. You see, that's a very difficult one. I know it sounds like an excuse, but have they done a mistake? If not that, maybe there's other situation that is much more dire. You see, that's how I would end up seeing. What? Okay, so let's say, so this is what I'm saying. This is really, I'm sure it will sound like an excuse. Here is this precious Dharma, need to be preserved. What you need is some support, material support, right? So that's happening. And with this, maybe they can build monastery, they can build institutes, they can train lamas. So there's this much profit. Okay? But we have to also, maybe they know that this man will end up doing something like this. So what do you call it? Way. That could happen. That's what I'm saying. So it's very difficult on the human level. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Or you are not convinced?
I think it's convincing if one thinks that basically it's better to harm humans than it is to harm the Dharma.
No, I will tell you what. It's like this. These lamas, this is one thing I can be very confidently, I can tell you. These lamas have never been happy giving the tantric teachings. That's one thing for sure. It's almost like very reluctant. You could almost, if you listen to their teachings, at least Tibetan Buddhism and Dzongsar Rinpoche, again and again, they sort of brood. They express a lot of what you call it brooding. I shouldn't be doing this, but the time is like that. The proper way is not this, not at this. They do so much. So there is a sense of urgency. There's a sense of reluctance. There's a sense of, okay, so we have reached to a level where you have to negotiate, sort of. That there is a law, I have to say. That I alone have heard a law. Like, actually, Jagdishan was even cried. This I remember in Nepal. Like, saying that, the time has become so degenerated. No one appreciates. No one really does things properly. not only said, in his writings, there are so many of that, so many. So it's like, I guess, we have to also think from this. Okay. Another angle. If they use their wisdom mind that knows this and such problem will come, it's almost like they would never teach. If the decision has to be made based on there will be a problem, right? So based on that, if they had to decide not to teach, then I would say they will end up not teaching, which is supposedly going to happen anyway. There will be a time where Tantra will no more be taught because no one would understand, so on and so forth. So we have reached to this age where you have to give in a little bit. Must be. If one downfall, for the sake of one downfall, if the lamas can't do their teachings or whatever, forget it. None of this teaching will happen, ever. That's what I'm,
Well, then Rinpoche, I was going to ask that question about, the student needs to examine the teacher also has to examine the student. So then this comes to that then, right? Is it so compromised that they don't spend, even these great masters themselves are not saying what they're telling us to do? Study the master studies the students. Did they not study him?
This is the thing. Actually, it's in the tantric text. Our tantric master have said so. I have alone taught. Tantra should not taught like this. It cannot. Tantra should not be taught like this. But if you look at the history of Tantra, I mean, like, we are talking about people like Saraha and Naropa. They are really accomplished scholars. And how they learned Tantra was like really, really utmost secrecy. So I guess, we talk about time of degeneration. I think these are sort of the character of degeneration. So when we scale down, this may be a really bad example, but I mean, everything is like literature, English literature, movies. If you really want to show a good movie, how many people are going to watch? So you have to throw in spice, which actually kills good movies. So that's how so it's a dilemma. There's a dilemma of the tantric, strictly from the tantric point of view, you teach openly like this. But should we now adopt that? Then tantra will die. So we have to sort of problem. Okay, we are going to do this. We are going to take the risk. Maybe if I do that to 100, maybe I will get 2, 3 proper tantric students. And that's worth it. Yes, that's exactly how the lamas think. I know this. This is what they always say. We are going to do this. We might get 1 or 2. And they do. By the way, so along that line, so everything which is Rinpoche, Rijum Rinpoche had so many students. Not everyone ended up. Even by proportion. We are talking about like 1 or 2 people who ended up becoming like this. Which, by the way, I'm also hearing it as a, what do you call it, second, but because all this is somebody's saying this and we are quoting, and I believe that this is what happened. These lamas, they have so many students, and even me, at the risk of being very pompous, I teach to a lot of people. Should say, by proportion, majority of my students are okay. I'm sure some of them misbehave. So then what do we do now? For the sake of these few, do we forsake? See, stuff like this, we need to think a lot. Yeah. So actually, Tantra really should not be taught like this. But if we do, then there is a tantric way, and people should really do that. Who does? But that applies with everything. Socialism, communism, democracy. How many of Americans actually understand democracy? How many? They are basically giving vote to somebody who's charming, somebody who's good at talking, somebody who will give you money. This is how life is. Don't you think?
But then I'm just thinking about, a practitioner who maybe they've invested like a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of their life, like a huge part of their
Are you
life.
talking about the teacher or are you talking about the student?
I'm talking about a student who's just invested, and maybe they're listening to this, and for the first time they're hearing that the teachers actually don't expect, how.
And if they have done it, good job. If they've done, invest their time and energy, especially if they invest their time and energy in studying such a tantric view, this kind of thing would never even blink their eyes. You see, this is the thing.
But what about people that basically feel like they've made a mistake? What should they do? Like, what should they do? What should they do?
I mean, once they feel like this, go back and study Tantra, Tantric view. They should really. Because it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's a personal adventure. I mean, you can always just be happy yourself, like climbing a rolling English hills. You can gain some satisfaction out of that. But if you want to climb Mount Everest, if that is the, adventure that you decided to take upon yourself, it has its profit.
But a lot of people who entered Tantra, actually, they didn't decide to climb Mount Everest.
They weren't informed ahead of time, Rinpoche. There's very little, when you talk about Samaya, for example, when you talk about receiving vows in an empowerment, how many of those texts are published in English?
Yeah.
You're reciting things in Tibetan that you don't understand.
Again, I go back. This is why Tantra should never be taught like this.
But it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it has been already.
Yes.
And a lot of people are ensnared now, and a lot of people don't know what they need to do.
There will be time, and actually, okay, even here, there's so many angles. I actually don't know whether the lamas are even teaching Tantra anymore. It may be referred as a Tantra. It may have a little bit of a tantric image floating around. I will be in trouble saying this, but I don't actually know many of the younger generation lamas. They themselves know Tantra. You see, this is the problem. Tantra is in demand. Okay, so here today, I have 3 items to sell. Especially if I go to Byron Bay or, like Woodstock. I have Charvakayana, I have Mahayana, and I have a Vajrayana. Most of the people will just choose this. So, you understand? They choose themselves. Well, as I say this, it may sound like negative, but this should be also taken in with a lot of empathy. Yes, this may be because of advertisement that they read in a coffee shop, but there's something kind of magical about it. This is also the proof of the existence of karma. Why would some dude in Slovakia or somewhere in, Halifax be interested in Tantra with some 6 arms, Especially people who grow up in Anglo-Saxon culture, Catholic, Protestant culture. This thing looks like a Satan, but yet they're attracted to it. So things like this need to be also, what do you call it?
So then, Rinpoche, what I hear you saying is that then isn't this more now on the lamas to come now and make these changes so that the students better understand what they're getting themselves into?
Yes, sure, yeah. But okay, it's like this. Lamas should, in theory, lamas actually, in theory, is a bit like this. A democracy should be taught to every voter before they vote. Really test, do they know what it means? And then they vote, right? In theory. But in practice, today, if you ask me, how would I do it? Would I do it according to the book? Analyze the student for 12 years, let the student analyze me for 12 years, etc., etc.? I don't know. Because I will also think about something like, I'm brainwashed by thinking, okay, he is fortunate that he has an inclination towards mantra. So I will, according to the text, he is supposed to, analyze me 12 years. I'm supposed to analyze him 12 years. But also, there's a lot of elements here. Also, come to think about it, I'm not daring enough as a tantric master. Wow. To be a tantric master, you have to be daring. So daring that you should not be caring about your reputation at all. If you encounter somebody who really don't care a bit about their gain, their loss, their reputation, I think you should trust him or her. Wow, you are lucky day. It is most of the lamas, most of the tantric masters like myself, we care so much about our reputation. More likely, we will not be doing all this hanky-panky stuff, not because we are so compassionate and kind, but just because we don't want to be, seeing next day on a social media, Dzongsar Rinpoche has this and that. I'm paranoid.
Say someone's faith in the whole thing is actually really hanging by a thread, and they're just sick of all of this.
Taking it. I have a different way of thinking. I think this, especially what has, that document, these are good. I hope there's more. This is what will test tantric masters and the students. I don't think it's bleak. I think it's really good.
Then Rinpoche, moving on, then how should someone who has samaya, for example, with one of these masters who end up getting caught and and their reputation is ruined, how should they deal with this fact now?
Let's say you have encountered a guru who is selfish, who really abuses you financially, sexually, physically, emotionally.
Yep.
And then you realize he's not the right person. The Tantra has a whole procedure of how to sort of stay away from this person. You should follow that.
Where does one
What?
learn about that procedure?
It's in the Tantric text.
Which Tantric text? Where?
So many. In the Guhya Samaja Tantra, I think there's so many.
But then if you're a serious...
Actually, this is a good question you ask. Because this is, you see, this thing is very good. I want to say this to a lot of Tibetans. Actually, monks also can give up their robe. Their vow. By doing so, actually, they can retake it. But that part, retake, let's say you are a monk and you offer your vow back.
Yes.
And we are talking about, Vinaya. So after 1 or 2 months, you think, oh, no, I made a mistake. I want to retake. You can't. Sometimes even like 3 times or 7 times, I was told. But you see, this part is never really been taught or at least talked about. here comes the culture. In our Asian culture, disrupt monk, he's normal monk. All of that, the people try to avoid. Then secretly they disrobe. Instead of offering the vow, they disrobe. Then they can never retake. So actually good that you ask. Yes, you can. Vajrayana vow, you can give up. Bodhisattva vow, you can give up. There's a famous story about how Dingnaga, who was writing the, Buddhist logic, and he keep on, encountering this guy who annoys him and who basically, he couldn't tame this guy. So he thought, okay, if I can't tame one person, how can I tame all sentient beings? So he said he threw the chalk that he was using to write the pramana. And then he said, okay, when the chalk hit on the ground, that's it, my bodhisattva vow, I'm offering back. That's what he did. Dingnaga, this is very big figure. And then the supposedly chalk never landed. And then he thought, what happened? And when he looked up, there's a Manjushri who caught the chalk and said, no, you can't do that. So on and so forth. So there is a ritual. We need to remember Buddha's path, Sugata, path of the blissfully gone. There is always.
But there's something a little bit tricky in this.
Yeah.
Because, say somebody is serious enough about their practice that they want to give up their vow in the right way, but in order to access that information, they might not have the authorization to go and read the Guyagarbha, for example. Or, this is the first time that I'm hearing about any kind of procedure, and I still wouldn't know where to find it.
Yeah, so, I have a sympathy with this. A lot of information is, you see, this is the thing, the Tantra is never really studied. Information on the Tantra is never really given properly. But my argument, but so is everything about our life. Except a few small things. How much do you know about your iPhone? Most of the time we don't know what the iPhone can do. It's a bit like that, isn't it? We get always carried away by a certain emotion. And you can also, restore. There's so much restoration, fulfillment, mending. Tantra actually is really rich with that. In fact, there's even I forgot the example. They said that if you are practicing Sharvakayana, and if you break the Sharvakayana vow, it's a bit like breaking a clay pot. You can't really mend. But if you have broken the Bodhisattva Yana vow and also the Vajrayana vow, it's like denting a golden pot. With the right attitude, right smith, you can make it even more beautiful. So there's a lot of that. Where is your question coming from? It sounds like I'm hearing that there's only one chance. Is that what you are talking about?
No, it's more like just thinking about so many people having a really hard time with all of this scandal and news and just sick and tired of it, and then just feeling stuck.
Yeah. If you are talking about like a Vajrayana, traditionally non-Vajrayana world, if that's what you're talking about, you're being impatient. How many years has it been? 200 years? With you guys, Tantra?
Less than that.
Exactly. It took 1,000 years. This is good. I hope these guys will make more of movies like this so that we have more chance to talk these things. It's really good. My only complaint is that there are lamas who actually condemned this individual. And they did not, quote that. That I thought, from the journalistic point of view, that's not right. But I guess all journalism is like this. I am now beginning to realize. You should say from both sides, right?
Then, Rinpoche, if, going down this path, and like you said, these conversations are good, what should the practitioners do if they discover they're going to be in a situation like this? If they find themselves seeing, physical abuse, if they find themselves seeing, if they find themselves being the recipient of a sexual abuse, where do they go?
Today you meet somebody like you realize that this man is really not right for you. This man is not going to. The main thing is this: this man cannot assist you to reach to liberation. In fact, this man is going to create more pleasure, more emotion in you. You understand?
Yes.
You should really go far from this person. I would suggest gracefully, it's a nice thing to do. But, if you want to do it dramatically, why not?
Do we have a responsibility to the other students, to the people that we see being recipients of physical or sexual abuse, to say, we want to help pull you out of these situations?
Yes, that is a good question. This is where I also will ask, I will question some of these conferences, some of these conversations. You see, this is what I was telling you earlier. They make it sound like all Rinpoche, all Dujum Rinpoche, all these lamas students, they all abuse children. It's not like that. In fact, I would say majority of them are good, really good practitioners. As far as bad apple, right? That's the expression, bad apple, that existed from the time of the Buddha. Hello, we are in the world called Earth. It's going to be like this. If everything from the day that somebody entered into Buddhist world, and if they become perfect, what's all this practice for? Practice. The very sound of practice means there's a struggle. There is a lot of, like 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, sometimes 10 steps backwards. There's a lot.
I mean, if we are then looking for some kind of authentic master, and well, it's like, then how can we gauge if their behavior, which might be unconventional, is coming from a wisdom mind or is actually just coming from an egotistical place? And if people's perspectives can vary so widely on that, how can we actually judge it?
I will tell you from by the book. Okay. Let's say you follow something by the book and you have all the time in the world. Let's say you are not a Buddhist before. You are searching for the so-called the truth. You go everywhere. You go to different religion, and then you go to one teacher who says, life is impermanent. Nothing is 100% satisfactory. Anicca, dukkha, anatta, all that. Oh, that's nice. Now, this is something I can do. Then you get inspired. You do the breathing in and out. You sit. You do shamatha. You do vipassana. And then, your courage even become more. Then you shave your hair or whatever. You beg alms and you be a monk or nun, etc. Then your courage even become, I want to do this just for myself. I want to do it for others. I want to actually work for others. I want to actually make people realize this truth. For that, let's say, one day you say, okay, here, you have a chance. You can actually make one person understand the truth. But for that, you need to do some lying. You might negotiate yourself. Okay, lying. I will manage to make this person understand the truth, through which he will be liberated from all this delusion. Me lying, okay, maybe I'll get a reputation as being a liar. Why would I care? You're becoming a Mahayana person. So see, that's what I'm saying. So you upgrade. Then one day you wake up. Hey, wait a minute. My emotion, where does that come from? What is my emotion? So on and so forth. Then you look deeper and deeper. So then you realize your emotion is just a manifestation of your wisdom mind. I can use this. So once you reach to that level, then I think you will have no qualms of jumping right into somebody who looks really like a gangster. But you know, he or she can actually deliver what you want. You will have no problem. So what I'm just saying is basically is by the book an ideal situation. But most of the time it's not like this. Most of the time you will be going to Byron Bay coffee shop when there's an impressive poster, tantric this, tantric that, and that's how you end up. Well, that's what human beings do. So only thing I can say is just be cautious, be mindful. And that's with everything. Never take things at face value. In fact, more established, more organized, you have to actually develop a certain attitude. Wait a minute. They're very established. They may be very good at lying. That's what you should be thinking.
In this case, then, Rinpoche, like you said, so let's say I have a friend, he sees a poster in the coffee shop and he's like, oh, yeah, I want to go to that, and I know probably, or I assume probably, that's not such a good idea, right? How do I skillfully handle that situation as a practitioner,
Very good. That's it. You see, this is one of the big problems. So that's why I was talking about how that documentary, a lot of the people who actually went to His Holiness, and they were, very naive. Yes, this friend of yours was so excited, who was so depressed for 12 years. Suddenly he goes to this coffee shop. He finds that this, dodgy, advertisement with a very dodgy person. And finally, he has a little bit of brightness in his eyes. There's this. What do you do? Yes, because you also love him. You love this person, right? That's why there's a negotiation. Would you say, no, don't go there and kill all his, after 12 years of depression and feeling dim, finally, would you do that? Or would you say, okay, yeah, go. And maybe you should let him go once, twice, 3 times, and then he's more and more excited. And then maybe, I don't know, skillfully you can sort of insert some, maybe there's another one better. So that's how we have to do things.
But then what if they've, by that point, already taking these heavy samayas and, then they're being told about pure perception to a guru and they're just already kind of swept away?
This happened a lot. In my eyes, I have seen people doing it. It's really hard. Really, really hard. And especially a person in my situation. Because fortunately or unfortunately, I have a label of a Rinpoche teacher. And me saying, no, don't go to that guru. Imagine. All kinds of interpretation from this person. Oh, he's just jealous of this person. He's being possessive of me. No one thinks, oh, very few people think, oh, Rinpoche is really, really, like kind and really, really, trying to really think about me. It's difficult. Welcome to the human world. It's really, really difficult.
So it's somewhat related to how people get stuck in things that maybe they want to leave, but they feel like they can't. What is Vajra hell? Can you very clearly explain what it is?
I can try to explain clearly, but I think it's going to be a really boring subject for a lot of people. Anyway, this much I can tell you. If the people think that Vajra hell is like 7 times more hot, 7 times more cold, 7 times, there's a 7 times layers of gates and 7 times sharper fangs of the, hell guardian, they're wrong. I hope the listeners will get this. One version of Vajra hell is reasoning. That is how profound Tantra is. If you fall into this casket of reasoning, you are forever doomed. That is so compassionate, don't you think? What an amazing compassion. Reasoning and rationalism. That's it. And you could be sitting on a sofa of the most softiest quality. You could be sipping the most expensive mojito, all of that. Okay? From that level. But you are a victim of rationalism and reasoning. Because reasoning, sensibility, rationalism, reasoning, oh my God. They are the most vicious net. You will convince yourself, you see. Basically you become, what do you call it, megalomaniac?
Megalomaniac.
You become the utmost vain. Do you really want that? Yeah, then you are not for Tantra. In fact, I personally have heard from certain Tantric practitioners that they would rather go to, burning hot hell. Usually this Krishna, they would rather go to that hell and burn out their karma, blah, 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 than get comfortable with this world of rationalism. This is how Tantra is so. I'm telling you, Tantra is so special. So this is the thing. So there's a part of us where I really want to share this to people. Right? Because it is such a beautiful wisdom. But in order to share, we don't want to just share it just like in the school situation. This. It's just information. Tantric guru is not an informant. Informant? Those who does the information.
Yeah, informant.
Informant?
Yeah.
Tantric guru is not an informant. They have to create the situation, right? Informant, you don't need Tantric guru. Just Google it. It's almost all there now. Or even better, Chat GPT. I actually asked ChatGPT to write a prayer to Longchenpa. It did really good job. I don't know how it did, but it did a good job. So, like myself, this is really a confession. I'm not a proper tantric teacher, not at all, not even near. But I have understood the tantric taste a little bit because of my teachers. Right? So now, let's say I'm like the guide who sees incredible, majestic, amazing part of the Mount Everest. And I'm in England now. And I look at people who are just, putting so much emphasis on climbing English rolling hills. And since they are so into like huffing and puffing, I feel that, telling them, like, hey, there's something else. But, I have to, there's a lot of, I have to take the risk. So much. I have to take my own risk for my own safety. And also I have to play the risk for the other person. He could fall, right? Mount Everest is very steep. And then if he or she thinks, oh, Mount Everest is terrible, and then he goes back home and tell all the fellow, English, rolling hill climbers, Mount Everest, don't even go there. What a pity.
But at the risk of sounding that I'm in Vajra hell and stuck with the rationality, Rinpoche, I wanted to address the issue, I think, that also pairs up with what you were talking about with these posters in coffee shops, right? There's so many lamas, so many, so-called Rinpoche, so many gurus around nowadays, and it's almost impossible to tell who is still ordained and who is not. Who is still ordained and who is not. Everyone kind of looks like they dress like a monk, but you can't really tell what any of this means.
I think in Asia, that's like a huge one.
Well, it's in general, right? Because you're just confused, right?
Westerners don't really care as much.
No, I think of I think of this quote that I heard from Jetsun Tenzin Palmo, where she was talking about the first time she met Trungpa Rinpoche, and he was wearing some robes and hitting on her, and had he known he had a kid, she'd been like, yeah, I'd do it, right? But he's like, oh no, I don't want to be the reason for him to stay in his robes or whatever, right? So it's.
Are you talking about generally about the Tibetan lamas?
Yes.
Yeah, Tibetan lamas.
They have never been that good.
Okay.
Especially, I would say, I will openly say, with the Nyingma.
Yes.
And Kagyu maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
They have not been good. I'm sure that they are going to attack me on this. They have not been good. There's a lot of cultural reason for that. You see, culture is always the culprit, and what's the opposite of culprit? Savior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Culture is always the savior and the culprit. It's always the big problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are a lot of Tibetan school, other lineages who actually even make big, what do you call it, remark about Guru Rinpoche wearing some of this robe.
Yeah.
I think if you are going to make comments based on the robe, I think then if you are valuing robe with a reference of like Burmese, Sri Lankans, Tibetans are going to fail.
Okay.
Yeah. Robe is actually nothing. Other things. Those Burmese. I mean, even Myanmar now is declining, but many of them, like I don't know now. 25 years ago, when I went there, many of them have no house. They have just a big umbrella and a mosquito net. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then not just robes, labrans. Oh gosh, that is the household basically. Forget that. I'll be very honest to you. Could even engage with the political, status. That is like, no. If you are bringing the, Sharvakayana level of Buddhism as a reference, absolutely not. But then, when you bring the Mahayana, then things get really more complicated. I think we just have to be aware which reference are you using. But it's not going to be that clear, I'm afraid. But I think that is a bit smaller issue. But Tantric Guru is big. That's important. And what we are doing is necessary.
There was one question I wanted to ask Rinpoche from the, we've been talking a lot about the physical and the sexual abuse side of things. I wanted to veer a little bit now and talk about the financial side. It seems that, money and cash is a huge thing. They're buying land for new monasteries, always some new project, some new stupa, some new statue that needs to be built, right? And there's so little transparency. There's so little information, right? It just seems very, very, very difficult for the average person, even a seasoned practitioner, to kind of understand what's going on with this money. And you mentioned Labrangs yourself, right? It's just kind of a maze, and we're just told, this is how it works. Don't you think that something needs to be changed? Something needs to come?
Definitely. A lot of reasons. Something definitely, especially on things like transparency. Oh, yeah. Financial nepotism. Oh, gosh. I told you just now, culture is a savior of Buddhism, especially in the traditional Buddhist societies like Himalayas. But culture is also the culprit. Yes.
Who is responsible then, Rinpoche, for helping bring about this change? Is this on the students? Is this on the lamas? When now that it's coming out and it's spreading to so much more places?
Equally, it's the responsibility equally to the sponsors also. I have actually grumbled a lot towards sponsors for being very not mindful. Many times, I myself faces lots of difficulties because so and so sponsors end up, sponsoring or giving gifts to some monks who we invest so much time and energy, making them kind of, what the monks should be doing. But then, just one smartphone will do it. But then, these things are difficult, right? Because I think also there's a lot of arrival of things like social media. Wow. Even when I was in my late 20s, disciplinarian in the monasteries, they actually have a severe punishment to monks for watching video. Severe punishment. Now, each and every monk travel with a movie inside their pocket. Time has changed. Now, what do we do? Should we ban the smartphone? Our monks will end up becoming an idiot. They will not know how to function in the world. Everything. So these are things that the lamas have to adopt. Of course. At the end, I think if we teach the Dharma properly to the monks, to the lamas, to the Khenpos, and if they really teach them that they should take the responsibility, forget about the transparency. When we talk about the transparency and all of that accountability, we are talking on the human level. They are Dharma practitioners. They should be really caring about the karmic consequences. That need to be taught. moment, I have to say, as much as there's all this kind of really materially corrupted monks, there's also quite a lot still, at least in the Himalayas. Many practitioners and monks, they're really, really good also. They may not be good at accounting. They may not be, good at the so-called, what do you call it, like corporate way of transparency. But actually, it's almost because they care so much about the karmic debt, karmic consequences, they may be actually extremely not wanting to be, like Allah Dzongsar Rinpoche, for instance, who would only buy things from the thrift shop, So there's a lot of people like that still hovering around because they know the Dharma has gone inside their head and the heart. That's the best way, actually. Even by learning the transparency and all of that, I don't know how much that can actually cut down our corruption. Because, learning a system is almost like learning how to get out of this system, isn't it?
So this is just a question that keeps on coming up because nothing seems to change, which is the really deep, enduring gender inequality that we see in really all forms of Buddhism, but seems to be very prominent in Tibetan Buddhism. And we have heard the answer before that this is culture and we're humans. But so then what can be done to change it?
Talk about it just as what you are talking. And I know a lot of Tibetans will get really mad at me for me saying this. Before 1959 and now, after 1959, now Tibetan Buddhism in Tibet. Before 1959, there's almost no nuns writing commentary on Buddhist texts. Now there's several. So sometimes, we never know where the help comes from, right? It's quite amazing. Sometimes, the situation, situation just transforms. It's quite amazing to realize this.
It's nice to hear that there's some small improvements being made.
Regarding the gender thing, actually, I would blame also the Tibetan society. If almost more than the lamas, especially the younger generation lamas. I think the younger generation lamas can actually appreciate that something is not right. But the Tibetan society is the vicious, powerful society. Oh my goodness. Just the other day, not just the Tibetans, actually Himalayans, in Bhutan, I have a small, friends, they wanted to throw a party. And they played. I didn't even ask them. And there's this techno music that has my voice chanting 7-line prayer, which, by the way, I didn't make it. One of my friends who made it and who sort of played a little bit here and there. There's so many of this kind of music, Dharma music hovering around these days. Anyway, there's this dancey music with a 7-line prayer, and they played it, and they danced. And you should look at some of the comments from the Bhutanese. They're not even I don't think they're from the lamas. the ordinary Buddhists. How they think it's like sacrilegious sign of the degeneration of the Dharma. Anyone who plays this music will go straight to the hell, so on and so forth. The Himalayan society are very strange. On one hand, they tell us about how, Himalayan society is changing with all the Christian conversion, materialism, all of that. But when we try to make it a little bit more adaptable to the young people, they themselves complain like this also. Culture is so strong. Culture is so strong. I mean, a few years ago when I was in Taiwan, this Taiwanese abbot. Somehow I bumped into him and we talked about how to really reach to the, people. Buddhism is becoming very archaic, very traditional, very moralistic. Young people are not interested. So he was telling me, what do you think we should do? And it's that time, that year, Taiwan was just introducing the gay right and gay marriage. And there was a lot of posters and that rainbow flag and all that. So I was telling the abbot, I was so excited. I said, this is something we could do. Send 100 monks, each carrying this flag. We don't have to say anything for or against. Just that gesture alone. Of course, it's not going to happen. I think there is the wish, but the culture is many times the Buddhist societies, they are themselves their own enemy, are strong. It's so intertwined. And it's so frustrating because I would say actually Buddhism is probably the most avant-garde, most progressive thinking. And it has now, we have made it just the most archaic, most old-fashioned.
So is there any hope for things to get better, or we should just dig in and get ready for things to just be worse and worse?
It will change. It's evolving. We are talking like this. But my only concern is, do we have time? I don't think we have time. Buddhists don't reform. I mean, first of all, the view, Buddhist fundamental view, we don't need to reform. That's already intact, very beautiful, very correct. Things that we do, reforming, Buddhists are not good with speed when it comes to this because we are so attached to. I mean, how many temples are being built, new ones? You can't really blame the Tibetans, Tibetans are really, basically, they are very old-fashioned. But how about the Chinese? Even Chinese, they should be a little bit avant-garde. They should be really thinking ahead. They are almost equally bad. They're so traditional, Actually, I remember once again in Taiwan, quite a, big patron of the, Buddhism. They wanted to build a big temple or a stupa or something. I'm so opinionated. I can never shut my mouth up. So I was so excited. I said, please, I have a suggestion. If you can do this? I said, why don't you build a big storm of Buddha's robe? Wherever the Buddha's body, you don't see, and it's empty, hollow. Just the robe hanging. And underneath, you have this line from the Vajrayatika Sutra where it says, those who see me as a form, they have a wrong view. Of course, that's not going to happen. Yeah. We don't move forward. Same thing with the Theravadan, I realized. So into a certain, because I think Buddhism and the culture got so intertwined. I mean, Western Buddhists, they are even worse. So traditional. So traditional. And that actually tradition is almost like regurgitated tradition. Yeah, but this happened. What to do?
So, Rinpoche, you've been spending a large part talking about culture here as both the culprit and the savior, right? So, how much of culture can we get rid of in this Buddhist context without breaking what fundamentally makes Buddhism so exciting and works?
We can a lot, and I think people are doing it. But as I said, how much time do we have? We don't have much time. Buddhism is, I think, one of the fastest declining religion in the world. It's declining very fast. Some other religions are actually growing very fast.
Is there anything encouraging to say? That if people are watching this and they do want to do something, they want to help, they want to, not just slow the decline, but maybe even turn it around? Is there...
People should talk about it, and people should be open-minded. People should really think objectively. People should think from the big picture. And if enough people do that, I think there's always a hope. Because what we don't have, the Buddhists have, that I think, I'm such a, whatever, die-hard Buddhist, I guess. Doesn't mean it's good. What we have is the view of Buddha Dharma. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. That's unshakable. If people put some effort in that, you cannot dismantle that. And knowing that is the key to their temporary happiness and the liberation. Are you finished?
Yeah, I think that was a very nice, hopeful note to end it on, then, Rinpoche. Thank you so much for your time again.